Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. I know I messed up the intro there, but I'm your host, Jon Jeune, at the real Jon J _FF. And it is the Week 3 Fantasy Football Matchup Show, y'all. Guys, we are getting into the thick of it. I love this week right here because after this week, I've been saying it a lot, but after this week, we're gonna get to know what we don't know, right? And what do I mean by that? We are gonna have more information, more data, more perspective on these players here so that we can make the best possible decisions as it comes to managing our fantasy football teams. So after this week, we'll have 3 weeks worth of data. That's, for me, feels like enough to be able to start analyzing some trends and start really getting these projections down pat, right? And these prognostications, if you will. So it is Friday, September 19th, 7 a.m. Eastern, 7:01 to be exact. And, as I mentioned, Week 3 Fantasy Football Matchup Show. But, y'all, I have some exciting news, right? So, we have Fantasy Football Diagnostics, a cheat sheet now, right? It's a weekly cheat sheet. It's your one-stop resource for waiver ads, matchup edges, player trends to help you dominate your fantasy league. Updated with weekly with rankings, utilization insights, actionable advice. So you spend less time scrolling, more time winning, right? So the best part about it, guys, 100% free. No one has to pay a cent for this cheat sheet. It'll be posted to the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Patreon page every Tuesday evening, about 8 p.m. Eastern. So you'll have it there. And this thing is awesome, guys. It has the a table with fantasy points allowed by defenses to the different positions over the last 3 weeks. So you can see, hey, Chicago is allowing the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over their last 3 games, right? So it's actually, going to go officially live next Tuesday, but beauty of it is if you actually go to the Patreon page right now, you will notice that the Week 3 one is already there, right? So, you could take a look at Week 3, see how you like it, see if you want to join the Patreon. The show or the Patreon page, the link is in the show notes. You can also, the link is in the show notes. You could look up Fantasy Football Diagnostics on Patreon. But the best way to get it is to go to those show notes whether you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on, or you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. You can definitely get it from there. But it also has the top 3 waiver ads by position for the week, has my top 10 PPR rankings by position for the week as well. And the utilization stuff will be coming very soon. But there's also some buy, sell, stash, right? So one player we should buy, one player we should sell, one player we should stash. So you guys definitely will want to take a look at this thing. And like I said, it's 100% free. When you go on Patreon, and it'll ask you, when you to join as a member, and you'll be able to get to see it. Actually, you don't even need to be a member to see it. Probably should have told you that. But please support the show, see it. Again, not going to cost you anything. There is an option to support the show for just $1 a month, right? So for $12 a year, you can support this show. And if you like what I'm doing here, you want to see it grow, you can definitely support the show and join that tier. But again, if you want this cheat sheet, it's not going to cost you a thing, right? So, and I will be putting this out all season long. And the way I think about it, you're sitting there on your Tuesday night, you get this cheat sheet, you're putting in your waivers, and it'll help you, see the big picture clearly. Which players, that you might want to target off of waivers, which of your guys have a good matchup, and hey, which maybe you want to buy a Tet McMillan, right? And if you had this cheat sheet, you'd see why you should buy in a Tet McMillan and why you should probably go out there and make some trade offers to acquire him. So uh, I know that was a lot, but I'm really excited about this tool, and I think you guys will all be excited about it too once you see it. Um, so yeah, it's on the Patreon page. Um, again, the link is in the show notes. And if you want it every Tuesday, that's where it'll be. Also, while I have you here, just make sure you are locked in, subscribed to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, wherever it is you get your podcast. If you're watching on Spotify video, make sure you're subscribed there as well. All right, let's move on to talking some football. Now, the Week 3 fantasy football matchup show, again, talking quarterbacks, tight ends outside or inside that top 10, wide receivers and running backs outside or inside that top 20. Last week, just an okay week. We gave out 17 picks, had 3 guys beat their ECR by 10 spots or more. We had another 4 of the 17 guys beat their ECR outright. We did end up with 3 misses, and we ended up with 7 big misses. So 7 guys that failed to even meet their ECR by 10 spots or more. So in terms of big hits, we had J.K. Dobbins finished as the running back 16 after being ranked 27 on the week. We had Roma Dunze, probably the biggest hit of the week, coming as the wide receiver 4, after being ranked as the wide receiver 34. We had George Pickens come in, finish as the wide receiver 15 after being ranked 31. And then in terms of the guys that just beat their ECR outright, we had Dak Prescott come in as the quarterback 6 after being ranked 12. We got a little lucky there with the Dylan Sampson touchdown. The workload wasn't quite there, but finished as the running back 26 after being ranked 35. Trey Benson, did give an RB3 day, finished as the running back 35 after being ranked the running back 39. And then Harold Fanning Jr. continuing to be a top 12 tight end 1 in fantasy. He finished as the tight end 12 after being ranked tight end 16. In terms of big misses, Michael Penix finished 31 after being ranked 20. Geno Smith, the quarterback for Las Vegas, finished 34 after being ranked 21. Zach Charbonnet, that one was atrocious, finished as a running back 70 after being ranked 30. Brenton Strange got me twice because he not only was mentioned in this segment, but he was also a start of the week for me, finished as the tight end 37 after being ranked 13. Joshua Palmer, the wide receiver 70 after being ranked 57. Devontae Smith, wide receiver 50 after being ranked 26. Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver 90 after being ranked 61. And then just the guys that just missed their ECR outright, Chigoza Mokwanko finishes the tight end 21 after being ranked 20. Chris Olave, this one I'm like, finishes the wide receiver 36 after being ranked 35. So that one didn't kill you. And I still, will continue to roll out Chris Olave. We might even talk about him later. Who knows? We'll see. And then Kayshon Boutte finishes the wide receiver 57 after being ranked wide receiver 54. All right. All that being said, let's jump into week 3 and let's talk through the matchups for week 3. So first up, we've got the Green Bay Packers traveling to Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. And I'm going to discuss Cleveland running back Quinshon Judkins. He's the ECR PPR running back 33 on the week. Judkins returned this past week in week 2 only played 25% of the snaps, but had 45% of the rushing opportunities. I'm expecting both of those numbers to trend up as we move forward, starting this week specifically. And the matchup is not particularly a great one. Green Bay is probably one of the better teams in football right now. That defense is one of the better defenses in football. Um, and but I'm going to trust that Judkins is going to get a little bit more volume here. So he's, I think, probably ranked about where he should be. But for those that are hurting at the running back position, depending on where you got Judkins or how you acquired him, he might be a solid play, a solid flex play this week because he'll get some volume and hopefully maybe he gets in the end zone. Staying with Cleveland, let's talk Harold Fanning Jr., ECR PPR tight end 12. The usage, again, still very good in week 2, 14 targets in 2 weeks, continuing to be involved heavily in this offense. He's currently the tight end 8 in PPR scoring on the year and has a matchup against a Green Bay team that has allowed the 6th most PPR points to the position through 2 weeks. And oh, wow, look at that. I could see that on this wonderful fantasy football diagnostics cheat sheet that Green Bay allows the 6th most fantasy points to the tight end position over the last couple weeks. So, yeah, I promise I won't do that all show. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Houston against Jacksonville. And a common theme here is that you'll often hear about guys that we talked about in the waiver show because they're being undervalued from perspective of you don't want them on your roster, and the fantasy community doesn't feel like they should be played. But let's talk Jacksonville wide receiver Diami Brown. He is the PPR wide receiver 59. Now, this is a guy that scored 17 PPR points in week 2, has back-to-back games with 50-plus receiving yards, and he's technically behind Travis Hunter on the depth chart, but with Hunter playing both ways, Brown is essentially a starter in this offense, playing 80% of the snaps, and now he's set to face off against a Houston secondary that is allowing the 9th most PPR points to the position over the last 2 weeks. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the New York Jets going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, give me Rachaad White. He's the ECR PPR running back 40. Saw a near a 25% increase in team rush share. Saw 10 carries in the game, had the game-winning touchdown on the ground. Bucks are home favorites against a New York Jets run defense that struggled mightily against James Cook last week, although who doesn't struggle against James Cook these days? Expect White to continue to see more work going forward, or at least similar work to what we saw from him last week. Next, let's talk the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Carolina Panthers, and let's talk Atlanta tight end Kyle Pitts, as he's ranked as the ECR PPR tight end 11. He's the tight end 11 through 2 weeks in PPR scoring, so that tracks. But he is set to face off against a Carolina defense that's allowing the 3rd most PPR points to the position in the last 2 weeks. So Kyle Pitts, I know it's been disappointing career thus far outside of his 1,000-yard rookie year, but he is in year 4. He is still a young player, right? He came into the league at 20 years old. So, and tight end is one of those positions that tends to, sometimes they bloom a little bit later, right? I think we've got this, sense of fatigue here when we see guys like Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers immediately come in and make an impact, and we just assume Kyle Pitts is terrible. And I think, and I was probably guilty for a lot of this. Kyle Pitts was so hyped coming out of college, coming out of the University of Florida. He was hyped as a draft prospect, as a fantasy prospect, right? He was the number 3 overall pick in the draft. And, we all thought, I know I thought that he was like going to be the next big thing at the position. And, he's hasn't really done that. All right. And then you throw in a couple of bad fantasy seasons like the last 2 years. And yeah, this is the reputation that you're going to get. So Kyle Pitts, I am trusting him. He's again tight end 11 through 2 weeks, and I think he'll continue to he'll continue to progress. Moving forward, let's talk Indianapolis Colts against the Tennessee Titans, and let's talk another guy that we talked on the waiver show, Indianapolis quarterback Daniel Jones. This is more of just like a confidence boost type thing, right? He's the ECR PPR quarterback 11, the QB2 on the year behind only Lamar Jackson, 3 rushing touchdowns on the year through 2 games. And the matchup doesn't particularly look great this week. Tennessee allowing the 30th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. But again, I like the usage. Going to trust him to be a QB1 this week with the design QB runs, the usage around the goal line, the willingness to throw the ball down the field. I'm going to lean in on Daniel Jones this week, who I have ranked at QB7 this week in my cheat sheet. So, I am confident in Daniel Jones that he's going to continue to keep this thing going. And let's talk Tennessee running back Tony Pollard. He's the ECR PPR running back 22, one of just 3 running backs with a running back rush share at or above 95%. Not seeing the pass game work we're used to seeing from him, but as long as these rushing opportunities keep coming on the ground, then he'll be an RB2 or better going forward. So definitely will lean on him going into this matchup as an RB2 with some RB1 upside if he's able to get in the end zone. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Los Angeles Rams. This is a rematch of the divisional round game that took place in Philadelphia last year. If you remember that, I think it was snowing that game, and Saquon Barkley had a ridiculous game as he did all last year and all playoffs last year. Anyway, Philadelphia wide receiver Devontae Smith. Yes, we were talking about him again. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 30. He came through as a dud for us last week. But I do think the Rams can battle the Eagles a little bit more than KC did last week. And if Goddard is once again out, he will continue, Smith that is, to see an increased usage. Last week, the Eagles did throw the ball quite a bit. There just wasn't a lot of production. I think Jalen Hurts barely threw for 100 yards. But Devontae Smith was involved, saw 6 targets last week. And he'll continue to be involved, especially if Goddard is forced to miss any time. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers against the New England Patriots. And give me New England running back Ramondre Stevenson. He's the ECR PPR running back 29. Saw a 21% target share in week 2. He already leads the backfield in rush share and now faces off against a Pittsburgh defense that has allowed the most PPR points to opposing running backs through 2 weeks this year. Ramondre Stevenson was completely undervalued. Travion Henderson, it has not come to fruition like a lot of us thought. I know I was, really highly I was really high on Travion Henderson. I was drafting him in like the 4th, 5th round in a lot of my leagues, or however I can get him. And it's I understand it's going to be one of those things that just kind of slowly bakes. We all used to say, Greg and I used to say all the time, like you just you let them bake in the oven, and you let them as the season comes on, these rookie running backs, they start to get more acclimated to the league. The game slows down. They start to get trusted a little bit more. So Travion will come around, but Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is somebody that's going to be productive especially for these early parts of the year. Now, moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals against the Minnesota Vikings, and I feel so gross doing this, guys. And I even said it in the waiver show. I talked about him, and then as I'm doing this, apologize if I offend anybody. But Minnesota quarterback Carson Wentz, he's the ECR PPR quarterback 24. Look, again, this one is legit just vibes right now, if I'm being honest. Kevin O'Connell's offense has proven to be extremely quarterback friendly. Carson Wentz is not great, but he's aggressive, right? He will throw the ball down the field. He'll even throw it in a double coverage sometimes. He'll scramble if he has to, and he gets to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson, guys. So this is purely a deep league, super flex, two quarterback league type of play. This is not recommended for your standard one quarterback league unless you're like in a 16-20 team league. Then yeah, Carson Wentz does not need to be started outside of outside of or outside of a two quarterback league. So moving on to the next matchup here, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Washington Commanders. Now, still don't know what the status is with Jaden Daniels. I mean, Marcus Mariota was definitely a candidate to be on here, specifically for two quarterback leagues, even deeper leagues, just because he does have his legs, but I mean, he has his legs. It's pretty hard to play football without legs, but he can use his legs as part of the offense and generating offense and rushing yards and fantasy points. But I didn't want to go back to back Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota. So we're going with Washington wide receiver Deebo Samuel. He is the ECR PPR wide receiver 22. And maybe this has a little bit to do with the fact that, Jaden Daniels is questionable coming into this game. However, he has a 26% target share through 2 games to go along with 1 rush attempt. I think with Eckler out with the torn Achilles, we'll continue to see him utilized in the rushing attack while also seeing targets in the shorter area of the field. We know that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, is not utilized in the passing game. So I don't expect him to see a lot of those short area targets. But Deebo Samuel, I think, most likely will still see some of those. And especially if Mariota is the quarterback, you could see a more conservative offense, which leads to more touches for Deebo Samuel. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the New Orleans Saints against the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm pretty sure you guys have guessed who we're talking about for this matchup, right? Because it's definitely got to be Chris Olave, New Orleans wide receiver Chris Olave, that is, who is ranked as the ECR PPR wide receiver 34. Now, guys, he is top 10 at the wide receiver position in target share with a team high 30%. 30.7% actually of the team targets. And the Saints throw the ball so much, like one of the higher rates in the league, that he's actually that his 10th highest target share at the wide receiver position translates to being 3rd in targets at the position behind only Malik Neighbors and CeeDee Lamb. Like, you are getting a significant discount here in volume with Chris Olave, right? Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, you had to get those guys in like the first 2 rounds of your fantasy league. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were both going in the first round of your fantasy league. Chris Olave was going significantly later than that. Now, again, you're not getting the production that those 2 guys have gotten, right? And that's part of, that was baked into his price. But one of the things I've talked about that was also baked into his price is his injury history. And for some reason, I feel like it's still being baked into his price a little bit here. So in terms of targets, like I was mentioning before, he's got a pretty large slice at 31%. He's got a pretty large slice of the pie, but his pie is larger than a lot of other people's pie. So even though his pie is the 10th, even though his slices represents the 10th largest slice, if you will, he's got the 3rd biggest piece of pie. So that being all said, I'm going to continue to throw Chris Olave out there. Yes, even though the matchup is tough, I often say if you've got a defense that is tough against the wide receiver position, right? Seattle, 32nd most PPR points to the position. That sounds terrible. I know it does. But you know what combats a really bad matchup like that? A crap ton of volume. So if he continues to see that 30% target share, right? I've often said it. I feel like it's more anecdotal, and maybe one day we'll get the data to prove it. But when wide receivers are seeing 30% of the targets, like it makes me like I'm not afraid to go into a bad defense with that, right? So Chris Olave, I know I don't know, it doesn't seem sexy, I guess, to play Chris Olave, but I'm stuck between, for example, I'll give you guys a, scenario that I'm facing, right? I'm stuck between Chris Olave in my flex in a PPR league versus Travion Henderson in my flex in a PPR league. And Travion Henderson, like we talked about, he's got the matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, number one fantasy or most fantasy points allowed to the position. Is it the most? Fifth most fantasy points allowed to the position over the last 3 weeks. So when I look at that, I'm like, okay, well, Travion Henderson, that'd be a great matchup for you. But Travion Henderson is not getting a ton of volume. He's not seeing the ball a lot, right? He's in a three-way backfield split right now that includes Antonio Gibson. I don't want any parts of that. When I look at Chris Olave, yeah, the matchup isn't great, but I know he'll walk out of there with like 12, 13 targets. So I'm like, do I take my chances on the 12, 13 targets, or do I play Travion Henderson and hope that with his 6 to 8 touches, he can make something happen against this bad defense? Yeah, I'm gonna go Chris Olave. Well, again, I've been wrong before. I could be wrong, but it's about the process for me, not about the result. So let's move on to the next matchup. The Denver Broncos going up against the LA Chargers. And let's talk Denver quarterback Bo Nix. He's the ECR PPR quarterback 12. And that's right. We've got our first one of the season, a player that I think is ranked too high. And I know we're used to seeing Bo Nix in a different light on this show, right? After last year when we literally were talking about him since week one. All right, I will die on that hill that I was the first person. We were the first people playing Bo Nix. We were playing Bo Nix before it was cool to play Bo Nix. But I don't see it this week, y'all. He is the quarterback 23 on the year so far and is set to face off against a Chargers defense that has allowed the 20th most fantasy points to the quarterback position through 2 games. And a lot of that production they did give up was to Mahomes, who added nearly 12 of his 26 fantasy points through his rushing production, running for 57 yards and a touchdown. So obviously, we know Bo Nix is capable of using his legs. That's not really the problem here. It's that he just hasn't really been using his legs, right? He's got 11 carries for 38 yards through 2 games on the year, so averaging about 19 rushing yards a game. Doesn't sound like 57, but he also hasn't been that great from as a passer either, right? He's thrown some pretty boneheaded interceptions. Cortland Sutton hasn't really been all that involved. At least he wasn't all that involved last week. So, when I look at Bo Nix here being ranked as a quarterback 12, I think that's too high. Let's move on to the next game. We've got the Dallas Cowboys against the Chicago Bears. And let's talk Dallas wide receiver George Pickens. He's ranked as the ECR PPR wide receiver 25. Now, I will talk about George Pickens any chance I get. Another guy we talked about a lot last year. His role is exactly what I thought it would be in this Dallas offense. He's got 5 end zone targets through 2 games. That leads the team by a wide margin. Has a bunch of hidden production in the amount of pass interference penalties that he's forced. And he gets to face off against a Chicago defense that has allowed the 4th most PPR points to the position over the last 2 weeks here. I think Dak Prescott's also in a great spot. So this is a great matchup here for George Pickens, who I think is going to very much deliver on a wide receiver 2, even borderline wide receiver 1 type day here. Moving on to the next matchup, let's talk Arizona Cardinals against San Francisco 49ers. And let's talk San Francisco wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 36. Pearsall is third on the team in target share, but he actually leads the team both in receiving yards as well as air yards, seeing an average depth of target of 18.1 yards. And actually, he's eighth in the league in air yards, and he's set to face off against an Arizona defense, allowing the 10th most PPR points to the position over their last two games. Again, he's starting. Mac Jones is starting, but he's Ricky Pearsall continued to see solid production last week, even with Mac Jones at the helm. And I'm going to continue to trust that Kyle Shanahan is going to be able to get his ball to his second best playmaker behind Christian McCaffrey right now. So moving on to the next matchup here, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the New York Giants. And let's talk New York Giants wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, ECR PPR wide receiver 40 on the week. Had himself a day in week 2, 28 PPR points, but also scored 11 and a half PPR points in week 1. He's 24th at the wide receiver position in terms of targets and gets to face off against a Kansas City defense that's allowing the 11th most PPR points to the position over the last 2 weeks. Again, talk about another guy who's discounted volume. That's Wan'Dale Robinson, 24th in targets. That's top 2 wide receiver, but he's being ranked. Sorry, not top 2, but you know what I mean. A wide receiver 2 volume, but he's being ranked as a wide receiver 4. So Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, deserves a look in your flex or in your starting lineup, depending on how deep your league is and what your wide receiver situation looks like. Moving on to the next matchup, let's talk Detroit quarterback Jared Goff as the Detroit Lions are set to face off against the Baltimore Ravens. Jared Goff is the ECR PPR quarterback 14. And Goff obviously had a big day this past Sunday, but I don't expect him to repeat that. But his defense is struggling through 2 weeks, and Lamar has been on fire through 2 weeks. So he'll have to keep pace in this game in a game that has the highest total on the week at 51.5. Not to mention Baltimore has allowed the third most fantasy points to the quarterback position through 2 weeks. So this one's has all the makings of a shootout in which Goff will have to, keep pace here and could bring back a QB1 type day. All right, y'all. And always remember, if you're watching live, YouTube, Twitch, however it is you're watching live, you can always jump in the comments. Feel free to ask questions. We can take some start-sit questions, lineup things, stuff of that nature. So feel free to jump in the comments if you're watching live. But now it's time to get to the starts of the week. And y'all, it's been rough. It's been rough to start of the week, man. It really has been. But we're going to get back on track. We are going to get this thing rolling. So I feel more confident in these starts of the week, right? Because we got a little bit more data. Plus, we also had some bad luck with the previous starts of the week, but we got a little bit more data. And, feeling really confident about these guys here that we're about to give out. So let's start with the quarterback position, and let's go Dak Prescott going up against the Chicago Bears. Dak is in a prime spot this week against a Bears defense that has been shredded over the last 5 quarters, allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks through 2 weeks. With Dallas's own defense struggling, this game has all the makings of a shootout. I also really like Caleb Williams in this game. So yeah, this is a great spot here for Dak. Moving on to the next matchup here, let's talk Minnesota running back. Did I say matchup here? Let's talk next start of the week here, the running back start of the week. Minnesota running back Jordan Mason going up against Cincinnati. With Aaron Jones sideline, Mason should see an expanded workload. He's already looked like the better running back through 2 weeks, and now he faces a Bengals defense that's allowing the second most PPR points to the position over their last 2 games. Going on to the wide receiver position, let's talk San Francisco wide receiver Ricky Pearsall going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Pearsall is quietly leading the team in both receiving yards and air yards, sporting an elite 18.1 average depth to target that ranks 8th in the league. facing an Arizona defense giving up the 10th most PPR points to the position over the last 2 weeks. He's a great breakout candidate this weekend. And last but not least, the tight end position. Give me New Orleans tight end Jon Johnson going up against Seattle. Yes, that's right. Jon Johnson, the tight end 2 in fantasy points per game through 2 weeks, leading all tight ends with 20 targets. Now he gets the best matchup on the board, a Seahawks defense that's allowed the most PPR points to the tight end position through 2 games. So, y'all, that's all we got for the starts of the week. Make sure you're following me at the real Jon J_FF on X and Instagram. Make sure you're following the show at FF Diagnostics, also on X and Instagram. And make sure you are subscribed, tapped into everything it is that we're doing. Make sure you follow that link in the show notes to get to that Patreon so you can get the weekly cheat sheet every Tuesday evening so you have an edge over your opponents every week. Good luck, y'all. Have fun this weekend. And yeah, I'll catch y'all on Tuesday for the waiver show. Appreciate you guys.